Because as a grown-up, I think the biggest problem is just shifting priorities. So that, you know, I've talked to a lot of loggers. When we back in the 70s, 60s and 70s in British Columbia, we were fighting against forestry, against clear-cut logging. And I remember interviewing a group of loggers that came out, and they were hammering me, and we were going back and forth. Great television. And at the end, I turned off the microphone, and I said, you know, I don't know a single environmentalist who's against logging. But what we are saying is we want to be sure your kids and your grandchildren will be able to log forests like the ones that you're logging now. And right away, one of the loggers said, I don't want my kids to be loggers. There aren't going to be any trees left. So he knew darn well what they were doing was not sustainable. He didn't want his kids to be loggers. But his priority was, I have to pay my bills at the end of the week. I've got my mortgage payment. I've got to pay for my car. And it's hard to shift out of that and think longer range and think about my kids' future. I mean, they think they're being very responsible, getting the food on the plate, and getting them clothes and all that stuff. But they're not thinking the big picture. And so that tends to make it difficult. I don't know, what do you think? I don't have a big story.
Just to build up on what you just said about the entire logging business, I think that problems when it comes to making a more green community come from higher up than they would with people who are lower on the chain, if that makes sort of sense. Like, a logger is only looking to make money for his family, but his higher up, who wants wood to give to cities, is wanting that and going at it. He wants clear cut. He wants everything, right? I think the battle should be taken to people who are in the office, people who are sitting, making money by going, I want profits, and I have an easy way out because I'm not paying for the damage that I'm causing. I just wanted to build up on it. I don't really have a follow-up question.
I have a comment. I mean, I think that's a very, very good point. The corporate agenda in British Columbia was, we've got to clear cut. That's the only way we can be globally competitive, to use feller bunchers and all these big machines that allow us to cut more and faster and so on. So what happened in BC is the volume of wood being cut simply continued to climb over the years we were fighting them. And the number of jobs, in the same time the volume was increasing by over 30%. The number of jobs were cut in half. And the loggers, the IWA, International Woodworkers Association, were fighting us and saying it was those damned enviros that were taking our jobs away. It wasn't the damned enviros. It was a corporate structure that said we've got to use these big techniques that get rid of men and allow us to use machines and computers and increase our profitability. So for a long time, I could never understand why the workers, that we were on the same side, we wanted their jobs forever, but they ended up fighting us because they were working within the corporate agenda. Which brings me to a really important point. Corporations are not people. Why is it corporations can give money to political candidates way beyond anything you or I could afford, but because a corporation can give millions of dollars to a candidate when they're elected, guess who gets in the door first to talk to them? Corporations' sole reason for existing is to make money. They may do things that we need that are important, but the reason a corporation exists is to make money. And we saw the consequence of that when you want to maximize money with the Royal Bank recently, when it's exposed that they are offloading jobs that are perfectly good jobs for Canadians, bringing in immigrants temporarily to take these low-paying jobs so that they'll pay them less than we would have to pay Canadian workers. They feel under no obligation. It's not a part of their responsibility to create jobs for every $1 million that they make. That's not a part of what they're required to do. And I think that's a fundamental problem that we face.
For a long time, I think research and money going into research has been going into the wrong places for for like advancing our community together. A lot of money is going into research that's either so far outreached that you have heard of the Higgs boson particle, for example, or things like that. We can't do anything with those. But money isn't being put into research to cause us to be more efficient with how we use our energy. I don't understand why money hasn't been put into. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of Nikola Tesla, but money hasn't been put into his research. We haven't begun, and I don't know why. But this is just the way it is, because it's easier to turn money into more money than it is to turn money into research and then turn it into savings. Yeah, that was just my comment about that. I'm so upset about it.
Do you know who your MP is?
Pardon?
Do you know who your MP is?
My MP?
Yeah.
No idea. I don't. Honestly,
You should find out and send him an email.
I know.
Just tell him what you just said. It's literally, he gets paid a lot of money to listen to you. If you live in his riding, it's his job to represent you. Send him an email, call it literally, just like show up and be like, hey, I've got an opinion on something, come listen to me. Because, like, he has to. That's what he's employed to do.
Very good point. These organizations like Greenpeace and Pembina Institute, Suzuki Foundation, are under huge pressure to bring out very, very well-researched papers on what can we do to achieve an 80% reduction in 50 years or 20 years or whatever. All kinds of stuff is coming out. Absolutely credible. We don't need to support scientific research for this. This is with technology on the shelf. Canada could reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by well over 50%, but it would take 30 years. We could do it 80% by 2050. So that stuff's all there. When Peter Kent was elected, or put into the position of Environment Minister, I immediately wrote him and I said, Peter, we're your guys. We in the environmental community have been thinking about these issues long before you even were born, practically. And we're your guys. You're our man. Your job is not to work for corporations. Your job is to work on behalf of Mother Earth and those of us that live in Mother Earth. And he wasn't interested. They're not interested in hearing what those solutions are because they want business as usual. So we need a crisis, it seems to me, an absolute crisis. But here is where I thought Sam's talk was so inspiring, because when you have young kids coming in with no hidden agenda, just saying it's my future, and want to talk to a coal executive, they're totally floored, right? What the hell do we do with these kids? You can't beat them up, you can't put them in jail. I mean, that's powerful, and I think that's a huge opportunity that Sam was rallying you all to get involved.
I think we have a question, maybe a question for